Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, one of us is going to be the killer, stalking around and killing their victims. The other player is going to be the inspector, trying to find and accuse and arrest that killer. Today, we're taking a look at Noir, which is a deductive mystery game for 2 to 4 players, depending on which of the 4 available game modes that you select. Now we're going to be doing a rule school for Game 1, Killer versus Inspector, where you take on the rival in a game of cat and mouse, hunting down the killer before they ice you. Now it takes about 15 minutes to play, it's for 2 players, it's for ages 14 and up, and it's published by Level 99 Games. Now I'm going to teach you how to set up and play the game so that you don't have to read the rulebook yourself, so let's get started. Noir is a deductive mystery game for 2 to 4 players depending on which of the 4 available game modes you select. In Killer vs. Inspector, you take on your rival in a game of cat and mouse, with one of you being the killer, having a secret identity like Linus. But they'll also have a disguise like Vladimir that they can switch to confuse the inspector. The inspector also has a secret identity, and they're trying to move around, figure out who the killer is, and accuse them. The killer will be killing suspects surrounding their current location, trying to either kill 10 suspects to win the game, or to kill the secret identity of the inspector. But the inspector has tricks up their sleeve too. They can exonerate a suspect and then canvass around, asking the killer if their true identity is one of them. But watch out, because the killer can get themselves surrounding one of the exonerated characters, and able to kill them, canvassing for the inspector, asking if they're around them. And the killer can even change their identity to the one they have the disguise for. Can the killer win by killing 10 suspects or the secret identity of the inspector? Or will the inspector win by accusing the killer or by solving it by knowing their identity and their disguise? To set up, you're going to decide who's going to be the killer and who's going to be the inspector. You'll find the 2 player aids that look like this on the back, and the front sides look like this. You'll give the certain player aid to the respective player. They'll place it in front of them so they can see all their actions they can do throughout the game. Then find the other 2 decks. There's a 25 card suspect deck that looks like this on one side, and it has that same character deceased on the other side. This is the suspect deck. First, you're going to take this deck, shuffle it up, and you'll lay them out in a 5x5 grid with their non-deceased side showing like this. Next, you're going to take the evidence deck that looks like this on the back. You're going to shuffle it up. The killer is going to draw the top card from this and secretly look at it. This is going to be their secret identity. Now again, they secretly look at this. They don't put it on the table face up like I'm showing you here, but this is just to show you that the killer in this game is Linus. Now, they are going to place it face down in front of themselves. They can look at this anytime, but they never show it to the inspector, of course. And then they're going to draw the next card off the top. This is going to be their spare disguise. Now again, they don't show this to the inspector. I'm just showing this to you on the table for just display purposes. And Vladimir is the spare disguise that the killer is going to be able to possibly disguise as later in the game. We'll talk more about this later, but this is flipped face down. And it's best to just keep the secret identity on the left and the spare disguise on the right in front of the killer. Again, the killer can look at these at any time if for some reason they forget, but they always keep it face down. Now before we go over the rest of the setup, which has a little bit of strategy to it, I want to tell you what the goal of the game is. The goal of the game depends on who you are. If you're the killer, like secretly in this game, it's Linus, they are trying to either kill the inspector. The inspector is secretly going to be one of these 25 characters as well. We're going to find out who that is in just a moment. Or they kill 10 suspects. So they're either trying to kill the inspector or 10 suspects. That's how secretly Linus will be able to win the game as the killer. The inspector is going to win by either getting adjacent to the killer and then accusing that that is you, and if they're right, they win. Or if they're able to say who the killer is, their identity, their secret identity, and who has the spare disguise, what the disguise looks like. If they're able to do both of those, they also can win. Now with having that as the backdrop, let's talk about the rest of the setup because it has a little bit of strategy there. Now, at this point, the killer is going to take what's called a kill action. This is one of the actions that they can do during the main part of the game. We'll go on over that even more in just a little bit. But generally speaking, his secret identity we know is Linus. They're going to take a kill action, which means they're going to flip over a card to the deceased side, killing one of the adjacent characters. And in this case, adjacent means not just in cardinal directions of orthogonal, but also diagonal. So anything that surrounds Linus, any one of these can be killed. Now about adjacency in this game, if the secret identity was Clive, they could kill any one of these that are surrounding them. They could not kill Marion, who wraps around the board to the other side. These are not considered adjacent, and those are the basic adjacent rules in the game. So let's say the killer kills Deirdre. They flip it over. Now what this tells the inspector is that the killer's secret identity is one of these 8 suspects. Now when trying to decide which one to kill, well, you probably don't want to kill someone on the edge, because for example, if they had killed Clive, they know that the killer is only of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 suspects. Where now, the inspector doesn't know who it is, but they could be one of 8. So generally speaking, you don't want to kill someone on the edge at the beginning of the game, but other than that, you'll learn some more strategies as you play the game more. Knowing that, the inspector is going to draw the top 4 cards off the evidence deck, and they're going to secretly look at those. Now remember, the inspector's doing this secretly. I've placed the cards face up here just to kind of show you how this works and what you might want to think about when you're choosing your identity. So at this point, the inspector is going to choose one of these 4 to be them. So the inspector's secret identity is either going to be Clive, which is here, Julian, which is here, Alice, which is here, or Phoebe, which is here. Now, you can wait to the end of this video to actually do this step, come back and do this once you have a little bit more understanding of the strategy, but generally speaking, you kind of want to be a little bit further away from the first person that was killed. For example, they killed Deirdre, we know they're one of these 8. Well, if they were Franklin, we don't necessarily want to pick Clive, because again, if the killer kills the inspector, the game's over, the killer wins. So you kind of don't want to pick someone that's like directly next to whoever was killed in the beginning of the setup, generally speaking. So that kind of gives us maybe either Alice or Phoebe, and maybe this one's a little further away, so maybe they select Phoebe. So again, this is all secret. So their secret identity is in front of them face down. Only they know this. They can look at it anytime if for some reason they forget. The other 3 cards are just going to be secretly in their hand that they can look at, but they never show the killer at any point, of course. Now keep in mind in this game that at the beginning, they killed Deirdre. So we know that the killer is not Deirdre. We also know that the killer is not Phoebe, because that's who we are. And we also know the 3 cards in our hand for the inspector. So we had Alice, we had Clive, and we had Julian. Now we know for a fact that those are not the killer, because there's only 1 card in the evidence deck for each of the 25 suspects. So if you see a card from the evidence deck, you know it's not the killer. And so now you'll start the actual game. The killer always takes the first turn. Then turns are going to alternate back and forth. So the killer's going to take a turn, then the inspector's going to take a turn, and back and forth until the game ends. Now let's go over the different things that the killer can do. There's 3 different aspects here. One of them is actually a choice of 2 things, like shift or collapsing. So we're going to go through all of these. Now one of the things you can do as a killer is shift. And shifting means you're going to shift an entire row or column over. For example, let's say we wanted to shift this row, everybody in the direction to the right. We would slide the furthest card to the right off the grid like this. Then we would slide all the other ones over, like that. And then we'll take this card and we'll wrap it to the other side. And so it will look like this when you're done. It would then be the inspector's turn. Now keep in mind that the inspector can also shift, but the inspector or killer cannot shift and absolutely undo exactly what the previous turn did. So we shifted this to the right. On the inspector's turn, they also can shift. They cannot shift this back to the left, because that would be undoing what we just did. Now let's look at some of the things the inspector could do, because it would now be the inspector's turn. And let's say they want to exonerate. Now remember, the inspector had 3 evidence cards secretly in their hands. They'll take one of those cards and they'll place it on the character, on the suspect. So they had a Julian card and they placed this here. Now this tells a few things. First of all, the killer now knows that the inspector is not Julian. Of course, the inspector always knew that the killer was not Julian because they had that card in their hand. Now when they do this, they're basically going to canvas, which means they're going to look at every card surrounding Julian. Adjacent is called in this game, but essentially it's surrounding them. And the killer has to say if their secret identity is one of the living suspects that surrounds them. And so if the killer would say Franklin, the killer would just say, yes, I'm one of the people around Julian. If they're not any of these, then the killer will just say no. So they never say anything other than just yes or no, and they have to tell the truth. Now, you might think this is very powerful for the inspector, and it is, because they get to learn a lot of information. But now the killer also knows that the inspector is not Julian, and they're trying to narrow down who the inspector is, because if they kill them, they win. Then the inspector will draw a card from the evidence deck so they have 3 cards in their hand again. If the evidence deck is completely exhausted, meaning there's no cards here to draw, then the Exonerate actually cannot be used at all. And the inspector cannot choose to pass, and they still must take another action instead. Now, a few more finer points on exonerating. First of all, again, it was just the ones that were surrounding them. Things never wrapped to the other side of the board. But if they had had the Zachary card, when they did the canvas, it would have been all of these cards. So again, see that some characters and suspects might have more people surrounding them, which might make it a little better of a canvas. But if you have a hunch on something, like this one was killed, sometimes it's better to go in smaller areas. Even though you might be canvassing less suspects, you might be canvassing in a space that might be more relevant to the state of the board. Another thing, let's just assume that Julian was also deceased. You can exonerate a deceased suspect. In this case, you would canvass as normal. So in this case, they're going to be canvassing around here, and the killer will say yes or no. My secret identity is in that canvas or not. And then this just gets discarded because it's easier to see that this is deceased. You would still draw an evidence card from the deck to give yourself 3 cards again. Now let's go back to the killer because it would have been the killer's turn anyways, but let's say it's a little further in the game and the board state looked like this. Now we talked about the kill action earlier, which was, we know that secretly Linus is the killer. They can kill anyone surrounding them. So like this. Now before we just killed a normal suspect, but you can also kill an exonerated innocent suspect. Now when the inspector exonerated, they learned some information, but they're all going to possibly be giving up some information too, because the killer can kill as an exonerated suspect. And if the killer does kill an exonerated suspect like this, they get to canvass for the inspector. So the inspector now has to say, are they one of the suspects around the one that was exonerated that is being killed right now? So it's great for the inspector because they learn information, but they're giving themselves up a little bit more because now if the killer kills it, they're going to learn some information. So it's a little give and take there. So again, the inspector will have to say yes or no. I am one of these characters that's around. Obviously, it's just the living ones, but I am there around them or not. They never say anything else, just yes or no. Once they've told that, this is going to get discarded out of the game, and then Julian is going to be deceased. Now let's say the board state looked like this a little bit later in the game. Either player on their turn can collapse. Just like either player could do the shift that we showed you earlier, either the killer or the inspector on their turn, remember you're only doing one action, can collapse. Now you can do this if every column or row has at least one deceased suspect. So if we look at the columns here, this column has one, this column has one, this column has 2, they have each one, that's good. This column does not have it, so you can't do it by column. Now we look at row. This row has one, this row has one, this row has at least one, it has 2, this row has one, this one has at least 1. So in this case, it can be collapsed by row. Now by doing this, you're going to take out one suspect from each row in this case, because that's how we're collapsing. And so it will look something like this, and then you collapse everything down, and it will be a perfect rectangle when you're done. So now it might look something like this. Now those removed are just discarded off to the side of the board. They still count towards the 10 suspects to be killed for the killer to win. Now, if the inspector had any of these cards in their hand from the evidence deck, they will discard those and draw back up so that they have 3 cards again. Now, if the killer feels like the inspector is getting close to knowing who they are and possibly accusing them, if they're getting close to where they are, they would likely try to disguise. Now, to disguise, what they'll do is, remember, you have your secret identity on your left and your disguise on the right. What the killer will do is take these cards and either put them under the table or just, so they can't see them, turn your back, shuffle the cards like this so the other player doesn't know which one is which. You're going to look at these two secretly, and you're going to decide to disguise or not, because you could be bluffing. So I might say, I still want to stay Linus, but I want them to think that I swapped. Or it's like, no, I really want to be Vladimir. So left and right, left is my secret identity, this is this, and right, this is all secret. You'll then place them down in front of you, with left being, this is my secret identity, this is my disguise. And again, bluffing is a big part of this game because you could be doing that just to buy some time, wait for the grid to change, or because you just want to mess with the head of the inspector thinking that they're getting close when they're really not. Now, since you know what disguising is, you can, let's say our secret identity was still Linus, you can kill the suspect that is your disguise. That is legal. Now, you don't say anything about your disguise ever, but now if you take the disguise action, you cannot actually switch to Vladimir. In that case, you would have to just be bluffing and stay Linus, but they won't even know that that is your disguise or not. So, but technically speaking, you can never switch to a deceased disguise. So now you know everything the killer can do. They can shift or collapse, they can kill, or they can disguise. Remember, if you kill the inspector, they must tell you and you've won, or if you kill your 10th suspect, you've won. Now with the inspector, obviously they can shift and collapse, which we talked about earlier, and we talked about exonerate. Now, one thing you can do is accuse. Now, if you remember, the secret identity of the inspector in this game is Phoebe. So they can either accuse one of the adjacent cards, remember, never wraps, and it's everything surrounding, or they can also accuse themselves. So they might say, hey, you're Trevor. And then if the killer is Trevor, they say yes, they flip over their secret identity, and the inspector has won the game. However, they might say, I think you're Phoebe. And they're doing that to mess with the head of the killer. It's a little bit of a bluff move, if you will. Of course, the killer's going to say, no, it's not me. But it really messes with the deduction and what the killer's trying to do. So keep in mind, if you do this, you're giving the killer information. Because if you say, I think you're Trevor, the killer now knows that you are either Trevor or one of these people. If you say Phoebe, they know that you're either Phoebe or one of these people. If you said Neil, they know you're Neil or one of these people. So that's how that works. Now, the last thing that you could possibly do as an inspector is to solve. Now, let's say this is the killer's secret identity and disguise. You need to name them, their current secret identity and their current disguise. If you name them both, they must flip them over, show you that you're right, and you win the game. So the inspector is winning either by accusing them and finding the killer, or solving, basically guessing both the secret identity and the disguise, where the killer's winning by killing the secret identity of the inspector or killing 10 suspects. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into Noir's first game mode, Killer versus Inspector, faster than you normally would if you had to read the rulebook yourself. Now there's 3 other game modes that you can explore on your own, and those play at either 3 or 4 players, depending on the game selected. Now if you have more questions about the rules in Killer vs. Inspector, there's a link below me right in the description of this video. That's the best place to ask them, because I'll be notified, but so will Level 99 Games.